What's going on, everyone? We are back with another video here inside the nerdy realm of the multiverse. We've got another She-Hulk one for you all today, as we just got the 6th episode of the series, so let's break down what we can and give our thoughts on it as well. Before we get started with everything, we wanted to give a quick little shout to our merch website, as we do have new shirts, sweatshirts, and more, all inspired by She-Hulk, so feel free to check that out. The link is in the description. Although there wasn't too much that happened in this episode, and it was even shorter than previous ones, there will still obviously be spoilers talked about in the video, so this is your spoiler warning now. With all of that mess out of the way, let's get started with the 6th episode of the She-Hulk series, titled Just Jen. The title of the episode itself represents how the majority of this episode is focused on Jennifer being herself and staying away from the She-Hulk part of her life as she tries to go do real world things, you could say, and enjoy a wedding. Of course, this does not last the entire episode, as there is conflict that is brought to the wedding, causing her not to just be Jen anymore, but be She-Hulk and to be a hero, as Titania does show up to the wedding at first, acting like she's there to just enjoy the wedding as well, but she does end up attacking Jennifer, causing her to turn into She-Hulk and pretty much for the second time now make quick work of Titania. In this episode, we did meet someone that goes by the name of Mr. Immortal. His powers are pretty self-explanatory just by his name, but this character is actually in the comics as well, and he was a part of the team known as the Great Lakes Avengers. Throughout this episode, we heard a lot about this company called Intelligentsia, which seemed like nothing too serious at first, but after Nikki and Amelia got a VIP or premium membership to their site, they found tons of messages of death threats towards She-Hulk and others posting things about how her blood works and whatnot. Obviously, with all of this going on, even when Amelia tells her not to, Nikki does end up trying to call Jennifer to warn her about this stuff and that she may be in danger. We see even more of what this company is doing, as we see what looks like a lab with scientists who are testing on blood and making more needles or weapons to try and puncture She-Hulk's skin to acquire her blood to presumably test on that. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but this Intelligentsia company and it testing on blood as well as looking to acquire She-Hulk's blood for testing just screams the character of the leader being teased here. The leader being an incredibly intelligent villain from the comics who was very much a villain that revolved around the Hulks, and the last time we saw him in live action was in the 2008 Incredible Hulk movie. Before he was exposed to Banner's blood himself, I believe we saw him testing on Banner's blood as well, which is what in turn ended up turning him into the leader, who I assume is the one behind the blood testing in She-Hulk. Nothing really major happened in this episode besides what I already mentioned, so this is going to be most likely just a quicker video once again, but let's get into our thoughts on this episode and talk about the future of this series and the character of She-Hulk and the MCU. Like I have said in previous videos on this show, I have been enjoying the series so far, and I do find the episodes enjoyable, including this one. However, I have also mentioned how they have been all on the shorter end compared to the other shows that we have gotten in the past, and there being 9 episodes total for this show, and this episode was the shortest one we have gotten out of all of them yet. This episode was realistically only 25 minutes long if we minus all of the credits, and if I'm being honest, besides the Titania fight and the mystery behind Intelligentsia, nothing really major happened in this episode, and nothing really progressed with whatever story there is supposed to be. And now that we're going to go into the 7th episode next week, and there being 9 episodes total for the series, I am getting quite worried for the series, especially seeing that there hasn't really been a set plot or story or villain. And just to be clear, I am not hating on the show at all. I'm just afraid that they are going to once again have a finale where we see a mysterious villain revealed that everyone everyone has predicted already and have everything be unfortunately rushed to the conclusion being in the finale, much like some of the other previous shows. Every episode has mainly just been different weekly adventures with the character of She-Hulk and stuff like that, which is perfectly fine and entertaining as well, but there being a lack of a set story or plot is a bit worrying to me, and we are well over being halfway done with the series already too. But if the series ends up just being like a weekly adventure with She-Hulk sort of thing, then I won't complain at all. My main worry is just that it has been that so far, but it will end up being something different and end up being a rush story happening at the very end of the series, last minute, making things sort of fall apart, I guess you could say. At first, I wasn't worried about this happening to She-Hulk, and I almost thought that there was absolutely no way that this would happen to the show, especially with 9 episodes total rather than the usual 6, but it does sort of feel like that's where this is headed, and I wish it wasn't, because I would love for people to be praising the show and loving it, because She-Hulk is such an amazing character in my opinion, and it would suck to see people hating on her character more than some already do. I guess with all of that, I can still fortunately say that the episode was still enjoyable, and I'm still enjoying all of the comedy and whatnot, and I do hope that I am wrong about what I said previously, because I wish the best for the show and for the character of She-Hulk. So I suppose that we will have to wait and see how it ends up turning out. Even with everything I said previously, I am still excited to see the next episode and future episodes, and knowing that we will soon be seeing Daredevil and his dynamic with She-Hulk has me even more excited as well, as I am sure that those two together will be tons of fun. And even if this ends up being rushed, I am still liking the series and still love She-Hulk as a character, and I always hope to see more of her, whether it's in the MCU or the comics. Once again, let's hope that we end up being wrong about all of our worries for the show, but with all of our thoughts said, we want to know what you all thought of the episode yourselves and what you think of the series so far, so make sure to let us know in the comments. As for other things that aren't She-Hulk, if you are curious about us covering the Andor series, as we have always been covering Star Wars shows as of recently, unfortunately we did see the first 3 episodes, and as new and different as they felt, they did feel a bit lackluster to us, and there wasn't really anything to talk about in them. So as of now, and as for the first 3 episodes, we won't be covering those, but if the series picks up, which we suspect it will, we will start covering it right away. And as for the Rings of Power coverage, as we have been talking about doing that, it's been a lot of technical difficulties when coming to talking about that series on the channel, especially when it comes to getting stuff from the episodes to show and explain in the videos. We were planning on it, and if the issues are able to get fixed on our end, we will start to cover that as soon as we can. And of course, for the House of the Dragon coverage, make sure to stay tuned every week for those, as we will be continuing our coverage on that series as well, after our first video on it being earlier this week. If you haven't watched that, make sure to go check it out. And one last thing before we get out of here, we are planning to start making comic book content on the channel here, finally, as we have gotten a lot of ideas to make, but in the meantime, if you do want some comic content from us, make sure to check out our TikTok, as we have recently been posting tons of comic explanations and stories. With all of that being said, thank you all for watching. If you are feeling extra nerdy today, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel with notifications on if you haven't already, so that you can support the channel and get tons more nerdy content just like this. As I always say, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.